More than 260 Ukrainian soldiers have left the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol after an assault which lasted 82 days. The Russian Ministry of Defence says that this video shows Ukrainian soldiers surrendering at the plant. Sky News has verified the location and we have blurred the faces of alleged Ukrainian soldiers. This is in line with the Geneva Convention on Prisoners of War. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is in Kharkiv with more on what might happen next.
We know that 264 men were evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks and 53 of them went to a hospital in the Russian-held east of Ukraine. The rest, over 200, around 211, have gone to a different town. But there's a different interpretation of what has happened, depending on which side you're listening to. The Russians say this was a surrender. Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin says, has committed to them being treated with under international standards, but a lawmaker in Moscow who said at least some of them should be executed. There's no sound, I think, or evidence from the Russians at the moment that they're going to be let go. The Ukrainians, though, say that they have been let out as part of a prisoner exchange, and they say they had no alternative but for them to be evacuated because military means of rescuing them and lifting the siege on the plant had come to nothing. They've fought this battle for 82 days against the Russians, seeing off a huge amount of firepower, artillery, airstrikes and cluster bombs used against them, and against all the odds, and I think against most experts' expectations, they've carried on fighting, but the Ukrainians are now admitting that that fight is over. So I think the question is what's going to happen to these fighters who've been able to get out, but also what happens to those left behind. We still don't know exactly how many of them there are. I spoke to Natalia Tsariska earlier, and she's a wife of one of the fighters, and she doesn't know whether her husband is one of those who's been let out or whether he's still in the bowels of that steelworks. I asked her, though, how she was doing today.
We only know the official information. We have no news direct from our husbands, and we are under the pressure of waiting.
How are you feeling now, Natalia?
I'm okay. So when I asked my husband, how are you? He also replied, normally, no changes. The last one when we kept in touch was the 7th of May.
So you have no idea if he's amongst the people who've been evacuated today?
So I have no list of people, and I have no information, but at the bottom of my heart, I feel that he is okay. I don't lose my hope.
When we spoke last, you said that if they ended up in Russian hands, they would probably be killed. Are you still worried about that?
Yes, of course. We are still worried about this because there is a tradition for Russian occupants to break all agreements.
Now, the Ukrainians say that the mission that they have been carrying out for more than 80 days has now been accomplished. That mission, they say, was to buy time and to hold down what they say were 20,000 Russian troops who were besieging this plant, troops that they couldn't be used elsewhere in the Donbass, so they will now be freed up. The Ukrainians, though, say they are now trying to evacuate the rest of the fighters in Azovstal, and we'll have to see whether they're successful and whether they will be surrendering to the Russians or will also be part of this prisoner exchange, which the Ukrainians say, at least, was their agreement with the Russians would happen.